All right, so what I'm gonna do tonight will be a little bit different. I want us just to try to get our heads around where we're at as a culture. And it's pretty bleak, to be honest. Sorry about that, but I want us to start just realizing just how bad it is. And then, of course, the rest of the semester, basically, we're gonna be talking about hope and what the Lord's solution is. All right, Elizabeth Charles writes this. Actually, this might be Luther. This quote is hard to nail down. It says this: if I profess with the loudest voice and clearest exposition every portion of the truth of God, except precisely that little point which the world and the devil are at the moment attacking, I'm not confessing Christ. However boldly I may be professing Christ, where the battle rages, there the loyalty of the soldier is proved. And to be steady on all the battlefields besides is merely flight and disgrace if he flinches at that point. And so today, in today's day and age, man, gender is where the battle rages. And one of our modes or postures at Southside is when it comes to cultural idols, which tend to be the controversial things, the things that get you canceled. But when it comes to the cultural idols, rather than like avoid them and dodge them and pander, we want to go after them aggressively. And so that's really what this class is about. Gender is where the battle rages. Just so much. I mean, it's really unbelievable confusion. Some of you older heads will especially appreciate it. Some of the younger heads, it's just kind of the air you breathe. But I want us just to zoom out and just kind of just face the absurdity a little bit tonight. One of the organizations that I love is called CBMW, the Council for Biblical Manhood and Womanhood. Started, I think, late 70s, early 80s by John Piper and Wayne Grudem, a couple lions of the faith. Piper just turned 80. And basically they saw feminism making its inroads. Feminism really began and really got taking off, especially in the 70s, more culture-wide. But they started seeing it come into the church. And so they started this organization basically to say, you know what, the Bible teaches different roles for gender. Yes, we're equal in essence, but there are different roles. And that was one of the main things that they started it for. Produced a document that I would recommend called the Danvers Statement. If you remember, you've got a copy probably, it's in our handbook. The Danvers Statement on the differences in roles. So just to say, you know what, okay, here is this movement that we'll talk about basically for a whole session here in a few weeks called egalitarianism or evangelical feminism that says there's no distinction of roles between men and women, mutual submission in marriage, and women can be pastors, those sorts of conversations. So they started this organization to show what the Bible teaches and what the church has taught for 2,000 years, what we now know as complementarianism, male headship. Well, fast forward, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, CBMW now has to release the Nashville Statement. So they began, late 70s, early 80s, talking about there are actually differences in roles in gender. Now they're having to argue there's such a thing as gender. That's what the Nashville Statement's basically about. You just see, in short order, 40 years or so, how confused we become. During World War II, men lied about their age so that they could fight for their country. 2026, men lie about their gender so they can beat girls at sports. Better Man Ministries released a State of Manhood survey last year. They said in the 70s, the predominant culture said, I don't need a man. In the 90s, the predominant culture said, I don't want a man. Today, everyone's asking, what is a man? Not that long ago. Now we have the American Psychological Association releasing a study just a few years ago that concluded that traditional masculinity, the things that we're going to be championing all semester, is, quote, psychologically harmful. Males who are socialized to conform to traditional masculinity ideology are often negatively affected in terms of mental and physical health. I'm going to argue the opposite. What happened? What happened to be 2,000 years and even just pretty recently? Well, Hemingway got a poem where one man asked another how he lost all his money. How did you go bankrupt? And he said 2 ways, gradually, then suddenly. That's how. Lots of reasons. You probably heard hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create bad times. Well, here we are. So much to be thankful for in the United States of America. It's been good times, but the good times have really created weak men. The way the Puritan Cotton Mather put it was this: faithfulness beget prosperity. That's where we've been. Faithfulness beget prosperity, and the daughter devoured the mother. Faithfulness beget prosperity, and the daughter, prosperity, devoured the mother. Faithfulness. So the world wobbles. We'll see where we're at in 20 years. But how we get here, lots to say. It really has started young. There's a guy named Leonard Sachs. I don't believe he's a Christian. He may be Roman Catholic. He's got several good books, actually. The Collapse of Parenting, one called Boys Adrift. Here's the subtitle: The 5 Factors Driving the Growing Epidemic of Unmotivated Boys and Underachieving Young Men. And so he's got this whole sociological, tons of study. The dude's got 2 doctorates. He's a physician, and I forgot what his second doctorate's in. I don't think he's married. Brilliant, productive. He says, here's the 5 reasons why boys are adrift in our day and age. He says, number 1, changes in education. Number 2, video games. Number 3, stimulant medications. Think ADHD, Adderall, see what's happened. Those are sort of tied together, right? Because what you have with changes in education nowadays in the last, it's been a while, several decades, when boys who are meant to move and you put them in a little classroom and expect them to act just like the girls for 8 hours, and he doesn't because he's a boy. There's nothing wrong with him. He just needs to move. And so we put a diagnosis on him and medicate him and numb him and dumb him down so he'll sit still. He says endocrine disruptors are a part of it. And then he says just culturally a devaluation of masculinity, where basically any masculinity is toxic. And you just think about the educational changes, right? Nowadays, 0 competition. This goes in sports and education, right? Boys are meant to battle. It's the way he's wired us. Boys are meant to compete. They're gonna do it. They're gonna fight. It's just what boys do. You know, Alicia didn't have any siblings growing up, and so we got 4 boys. And as they're little, she's, what is wrong with them? It's just normal. It's just what boys do. You take away the gun, what do? They turn their piece of bread into a gun. They're gonna make it. Like, that's what they're gonna do. Well, now we have no competition whatsoever. We've moved from more experiential to now didactic. So much has moved from outdoors to indoors. Then you have the acceleration of early elementary curriculum. So much of what's wrong with the world today is from the universities. Part of it is now all of education prior to the universities is just what? College prep, even at the earliest age. So we have this acceleration of early elementary curriculum so that kindergarten is the new first, because we want to just prepare them as best we can to get the scholarly to the Ivy League school. And so now instead of more play, it's school. Again, having that little boy sit still all day long. And schools are generally unfriendly to boys, just in general. Mostly because they're taught by women. Praise God, I think it should be the case. But most women, generally, by the way, there's going to be a lot of generalizations in this class. I understand there are exceptions. When it comes to generalizations, when it comes to gender, though, we're going to talk about the norms. The exceptions make bad law. Generally speaking, most women, especially younger teachers, don't understand boys. They don't understand the difference. Actually, Leonard Sachs shows this substantially with evidential sociology. And so they want to basically make the boy like the girl. And so schools have become basically unfriendly to most boys today. So it starts early. There's a lot of other factors, not just those. There's a war on men, which is really important to know and engage in, because one of the things we say a lot around here is, as the man goes, so goes the family. We'll talk about all this as we go. He's called the head in Ephesians 5. So as the man goes, so goes the family, so goes the church, so ultimately goes the community, so goes the nation. So many of the problems we have in the country are really at the end of the day due to fatherlessness. As the man goes, everything else trickles down from him. God has invested you by nature, by virtue of being a man, with significant influence. It's hard today, though. Just turn on the television. Who are some of the dudes, typical men out there in popular culture? And how are they portrayed? Just think of TV shows, series, movies. Ray Romano. What are some characteristics of Ray Romano? Emasculated.
Not running his home,
Dumb.
make decisions.
Passive. Yeah. Others. Homer. Homer Simpson. What are some characteristics of Homer? Really similar, right? Who else? I wouldn't know the current stuff probably, but what other father figures are out there that are painting a vision of manhood to those who watch it?
I mean, personally, one that destroyed it for me was a lot of the rap individuals like Diddy and Jay-Z and Will Smith, and they set up a massive persona that we assumed, but then within the past few years, realizing they're all the complete opposite, essentially, of.
Yeah. That's good, yeah. Others come to mind?
Andrew Tate.
Andrew Tate, yikes. Yeah, man. What a degenerate person. Others?
I come to realize when kids are growing up, watching some of these Nickelodeon shows and some of these Disney shows, how they portrayed the parents, because the shows were about the kids.
Mm-hmm.
But the parents were always the fools in these
Yeah,
shows.
that's right.
They always get one over on the parents, and the kids get away with it. I feel like that's what the kids were taught in those early.
Yeah, absolutely. So many, I think it's beyond Nick. I think a general theme of children's movies is that children are smarter than their parents. Absolutely. They're buffoons, they're aloof. Al Bundy from Married with Children, the father from the Bernstein Bears. When do you see a man in a show who is competent, confident, humble, has a vision, there to lead those under his authority to flourishing? When do you see that? Are there any exceptions? Tim the Toolman. There you go. There you go. All right. Generally speaking, buffoons, clueless, bumbling, inept, aloof, incompetent, boorish, self-centered, right? They're just basically, not good for much except for the butt of jokes. The dog typically knows better than the dad. And here's the deal, though. Media disciples. We know this from our phones, right? Screens shape. And so media has affected gender role attitudes. Discipleship's happening. Formation's always occurring. We imitate what we see. Media creates values. Ultimately, media creates self-identity. We'll talk a lot about the fact that probably most of us didn't have our own role models as well. So it's tough. Culture is incredibly confused. Just some recent examples. Many of you probably seen most of these. Supreme Court Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson was asked to provide a definition of the word woman. She couldn't. And one of the phrases was, I'm not a biologist. Supreme Court Justice, I can't define a woman. I'm not a biologist. Just today, Senator Josh Hawley. This is worth looking up because he put this doctor on the hot seat and would not let her move, probably for a good 2.5 minutes. Can a man be pregnant? Can a man become pregnant? Can a man be impregnated? He just kept asking it over and over and over. She's a physician. She wouldn't answer. It was a sight to see. I don't know Josh Hawley very well, but man, I like the guy. These yes-no questions are just a political tool. Can a man get pregnant? I think you're trying to reduce the complexity. Can a man get pregnant? Can a biological male get pregnant? A leading doctor who was called in to the court couldn't answer. Saw a lady, the profile, this was on Twitter, her profile was this: activist, healer, radical intersectionalist poet, non-white, she was white, ecosexual, pronouns, variable, selfless and brave, buy my books. And good girl to your pets. And she said this: dog owners, stop saying good boy and good girl. This kind of gendered language is normal. Talking about the dogs, right? Don't say this to your dogs. This kind of gendered language is normalizing the myth of canine sexual dimorphism and delegitimizes the lived experience of trans dogs. Not a joke. Then she had the puppy emoji and then the rainbow flag emoji. For real. There's an aquarium in London that's committed to raising their penguin colony where the penguins are not treated with preconceived gender roles. I don't know what a male penguin does different than a female penguin, but they won't be treated as such. They won't be pigeonholed. And then we have, this is a little bit old now, but Gentleman's Quarterly. This is the new masculinity with Pharrell wearing some kind of thing there. Man, I read through this, it was painful. The new masculinity, according to Gentleman's Quarterly, will no longer be exclusively for or about men. Any traditional notions are going to be challenged and shifted and overturned. In there, we learn that diamonds are a man's best friend, actually. That we should listen to our feminine parts. Your feminine part should be your wife, if you have one. You don't have a feminine part otherwise. Harry Styles is in here quite a bit, who loves to play dress up like a girl. He writes, I'll go and shop sometimes, and I just find myself looking at the women's clothes thinking they're amazing. It's like anything. Anytime you're putting barriers up in your own life, you're just limiting yourself. That's a theme. Anything outside is just limiting the self. So we could talk a little bit about the worldview of expressive individualism that has led to transgenderism and all the other things. It's chaos. It really is. This is clown world we live in right now. The Australian Breastfeeding Association is supporting men who want to be women to take a mix of largely untested prescription drugs that chemically force men to lactate. Induce lactation. How about this headline? Transgender man gives birth after sperm donation from transgender woman, it felt so right. I don't even know, I can't put that together. You all know a few years ago, Glamour magazine named Bruce Jenner the Woman of the Year, which caused Rebecca Merkel to say, Glamour, the magazine, Glamour has declared that a middle-aged white man who's been pretending to be a woman for a grand total of 1 year is already doing it better than all the rest of us women. We're told that we can't impose our binary genders on babies. Can't call them boys or girls, not up to us, not up to God. We call them babies. Germany, you can put an X instead of a male or female on birth certificates. Maybe some of you saw the Celine Dion commercial. She walks into a hospital nursery. They're all wearing blue and pink, and she says, we must thrust these babies into the future, but the course will be theirs to choose. And she blows this black dust and turns them all into black clothing instead of blue and pink. North Carolina School District, kids can no longer be called boys and girls, only students. Toys R Us got rid of the boys-girls section. Cap guns next to Barbies now, it's just all mixed in. College students are penalized. I'd be curious if that's the case here. If you use the masculine singular pronoun generically as he, you get marks, must be he or she or they. It's one thing to do that. It's nothing to take off for it. In many ways, the transgender movement really is just a development from the feminist movement. We'll talk a lot about that week 3. But it's really been terrible for women. That's the problem. Feminism at the end of the day is bad for the ladies. I mean, just real obviously, when a man can enter and use women's restrooms, women lose on a couple levels. When men can play women's sports, they lose, literally. About 10 years ago, there was a transgender female, so a man, fought in MMA, and she crushed the skull of her opponent, gave her a concussion and 7 surgical staples. It was a man fighting a woman. The fight lasted 2.5 minutes. Here's what the gal who'd been training, a good chunk of her life for this fight, here's what she said after having her skull crushed. I've fought a lot of women and have never felt the strength that I felt in a fight as I did that night. I can't answer whether it's because she was born a man or not, because I'm not a doctor. I can only say I've never felt so overpowered ever in my life, and I am abnormally strong female in my own right. There's a day when a man would go to jail for hitting a woman. Now he's making the bucks. There's a trans Australian woman breaking all kinds of weightlifting records. In Connecticut, there was a boy who decided to run as a girl named Andrea. So he was in middle school, he ran track as a boy, and then he identified as a girl. In Connecticut, you just have to say it. You don't have to have anything pre or post puberty. You don't have to, nothing. Just say it. You know what, I'm a girl today. And so that's what he did. So his freshman year of high school, he ran the 100 and 200 meters, and his time would have put him in last place for the girls. Excuse me, for the boys. So he's a boy. His time would have put him in last place for the boys, but he dominated the girls, won the state championship in 2017. Ironically, Andrea was beat the next year by Terry Miller, another boy, identifying as a girl. But even in Texas, Even in Texas, Mac Beggs identified as a female and won the Texas Girls State Wrestling Championship in 2017. Come on. We're locking up men who identify as women, and then we're surprised when they're raping women. We've lost our minds in American culture. It's not just American. Europe was there before us. When people reject God, things become irrational. C.S. Lewis said, if we strip men and women of the certainty that they're created in the image of God, we can't be surprised when they act like beasts of the field. He said, you can't remove the organ and demand the function. It doesn't work that way. So we are in trouble. We're in trouble. Let me show you this video that's about 9 years old. And what does that say about our university system? And it's really too late by the time they get to university. They've been so discipled in DEI and tolerance and inclusion and open-mindedness and relativism. We're so open-minded that our brain is falling out. We can't discern differences. Facebook used to allow the gender options, and there for a little season, they just kept expanding. And I think it got to 71 before they just stopped. So, start with 2, and then expand, 71 options, and it just got out of hand. So now it's just custom. You put it in. You do you. They said this. They said, when you come to Facebook to connect with the people, causes, and organizations you care about, we want you to feel comfortable being your true, authentic self. An important part of this is the expression of gender, especially when it extends beyond the definitions of just male and female. So today, we're proud to offer a new custom gender option to help you better express your own identity on Facebook. It was just 25 years ago, 1994, that the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual had gender identity disorder. And then in 2013, it was gender dysphoria, so that the emphasis is not on gender incongruence as a disorder, but with the distress of feeling that way. Just not that long ago. This stuff has happened so fast. And, here in Abilene, we're a little behind things, which is good, but it's there latent. Even Abilene AISD has 19 pro-transgender titles in their libraries, 51 copies, probably more now. So how'd we get here? Lots of reasons we've seen. Some of it stems back to the Industrial Revolution. It really did change our culture in a lot of ways and was harmful for the home in a lot of ways. Now, we don't want to go before then, but we need to just realize, okay, what are some of the factors that have brought us to the problem? And then the rest of the time we'll spend talking about the solutions. But the Industrial Revolution, 1780s to 1830, transformed households. Work was taken out of the home. So men, for the first time in history, really, were forced to follow their work out of the home, leaving this gaping hole in family life. Here's how Nancy Piercy puts it. She says, the most obvious change is that men had little choice but to follow their work out of households and fields and into factories and offices. As a result, their physical presence around the household dropped sharply. It became difficult for them to fulfill their traditional responsibilities in the home. Fathers simply no longer spent enough time with their children to educate them, enforce regular discipline, or train them in adult skills and trades. Again, so much of it goes back to a father who either was physically absent or in other ways absent. So many of these activists, same goes for actually some of the most vocal atheists, had terrible fathers. You name them. Today's you name some of the most famous atheists there are, almost guarantee it, they had no father or tyrants for fathers. Same with so many activists who hate all things traditional. If you ever get to talk with them, ask them, hey, tell me about your relationship with your dad. Super telling. So that changed the household quite a bit. What else? Well, what else? Let me ask you, what else? What else has brought us to where we are that we haven't mentioned? Technology. The Enlightenment. The pill. I think that might be the underrated one. Others? Pornography. We'll talk about most of these things this semester. I didn't hear you. Freud, yeah, that's right. Ideology, so much of it. Ideas have consequences. Bad ideas have victims. Not to put you on the spot, but how about the pill? How would the pill cause us to be where we are when it comes to gender? And I'm not talking about just transgender. I know I've highlighted that a little bit, but just the gender confusion and where the family's at. How would the pill get us to where we are?
Well, it enters the idea of having control over things that you ought not to have that control over. And then, I choose my journey, the biological journey, and all those things. It just, in my opinion, it breeds that kind of ideology and thinking, which translates into other gender ideological thinking.
Control, distorted thinking, yeah. And by the way, let me footnote this. One of the biggest mistakes of Alicia and I's marriage is we were on the pill when we first got married. We were just ignorant. It's what all her friends were doing. It's what all my friends were doing. We thought it was fine. Maybe you don't know. One of the mechanisms is abortifacient. In other words, it removes life. It is an abortifacient mechanism, and you never know which layer. They typically have 3. Which one it is. So it's not a Christian option. The birth control pill is not a Christian option. So I didn't know that, learned that a couple years in. Just because of the abortifacient nature of it alone, it's not a Christian option because it has the potential to kill. It's also a class 1 carcinogenic as well. So maybe you were like me and ignorant. Talk to your ladies. A lot of gals don't know this. So are IUDs, by the way. So it's important to read the fine print on these things. Sometimes it's just ignorance, not ill intent. So let's be those that lovingly, humbly inform one another about these things. But what else?
Consequence-free sex.
Consequence-free sex. Yeah, we're so, just the air we breathe, we forget that for most of human history, that if you had sex, there was a high chance a baby would come. We just don't think that way anymore. Why? Because of the pill, the ubiquity of the birth control pill. So what would that do? What would that do? Let's start with the woman. What would that do in the woman's mindset if every sex act could lead to a baby? Much more conservative, right? Because it's very costly, much more costly for a woman than a man, right? And if a woman's more conservative, go ahead, Ronnie. Looking for a husband instead of a boyfriend. Very similar, right?
There's another interesting chemical occurrence that happens with the pill, which is that, now I don't remember exactly how it works, whether it raises the progesterone or the estrogen, but whichever one that it actually raises, in that chemical state, it actually works in the woman's mind that testosterone becomes more repulsive and they're more drawn to the estrogen. And so there's been this correlated statistical effect that the more people are on the pill, the more that they kind of dislike masculinity from a testosterone standpoint,
Wow.
and thus end up in more relationships with more effeminate partners.
Fascinating.
There's been a lot of women that once they come off the pill, they're actually repulsed by their boyfriend, husband, whatever, and it's led to a lot of divorce also. Because
And stop the pill leading to divorce, what Jake said. Yeah, so if the woman then was going to be more conservative, would be looking for a husband, what's that going to do to men? I'm generally speaking. Sorry, that was too much. Say it again.
gotta rise up.
Rise up. Someone say something differently?
It said shape up over there.
Shape up, rise up. Yeah, so we'll talk some more about this later, but we can just get it on the ground. Most men are driven by sex. That is God's design. For you single guys, your sex drive is probably one of the things you hate most right now in your life because it's causing you to sin. You hate it. But listen, one way to redeem that, reorient that perspective is that's God-given. God gave you that sex drive so that you would get out of your mama's closet and get a job and find a wife. That sex drive is God's gift. He gave it to you. But so I understand, I've been there, that it can feel like your enemy. It's not, it's your friend. So most men, that's what they're after. They want to have sex. They think about it every whatever seconds. So you flip, it's just a thought experiment that's hard to think about that today. Even today, look, it's all women, they just band together to not, just non-Christians and Christians. Obviously, I'm thinking here of non-Christians. I'm hoping that if a woman is a professing Christian, this is a non-starter, and same with a man. But if even all non-Christian women just band together, we will not give it up until marriage. How that would actually change our world. Why? Because then every man who wants to have sex with this woman would realize, I got to rise up, I got to shape up, I got to be responsible because I want to have sex with this woman, but sex comes with a lot of other things, therefore I better be all in. And then, in God's sweet design, when that baby does come, something happens in the man. You know, it's like those small pickup trucks. We drive better when there's a little weight in the back, right? We need some responsibility. That's the way we're designed. Really, manhood doesn't come until you're married. Sorry, single guys. Really doesn't come until you have a kid. Because you're made for responsibility. And so if you had that order that is God's design of become marriable, then marry, then have sex, then have kids. Oh man, it'd be a different world. Well, now sex is free. Sex is free. And so why would I become a responsible person? I can get what I want. Again, I'm thinking of the culture here. I can get what I want without having any consequences. Consequence-free sex. It's changed us in a huge way. Major, major problem. Sociologist Mary Eberstadt says that the sexual revolution and the introduction of the pill has led to, quote, an atrophying of the protecting instinct in many men. Atrophying, weakening of the protective instinct in many men because they have nothing to protect and nothing to rise up for. Interestingly, Mary Eberstadt, also a really solid sociologist, she also argues that the secularization of the West is due to this. At the same time, the downplaying of the family, not the opposite. So when you have the family becoming less central, secularization comes. Fascinating stuff. Again, we all know this from the Bible, God's design. Then you add pornography. So again, if man is driven largely by a sexual instinct, well, now it's just accessible in your pocket and you're numbed and you're no longer driven to go get what God gave you that sex drive to go get, a woman and a family. We'll talk more about porn later, which has all led to the sexual revolution. We're really in the fruit of it now. After a generation of no-fault divorce, also for some of the young heads, you just got to realize this. 1969, Ronald Reagan, by the way, he said no-fault divorce was the biggest mistake he ever made of his political career. But when it took work to get divorced, like you had to come and make a case to get divorced, what a different world we're in now, where I'm just tired of them. I've fallen out of love. The vast majority of divorces now are irreconcilable differences, falling out of love. 70% of divorces are initiated by women in the United States. No-fault divorce, the unhinging of sex from procreation and marriage, pornified world, cohabitation. We're in a sexual revolution, and now we're seeing gender separated from sexuality, even biology. We're just like making up ways we can snub the Creator in God's design. Sexuality is simply, for me, my personal satisfaction, my self-actualization. If gender gets in the way of that, well, we'll just toss it. So Western culture has been effeminized in a big way. Boys now, because of all these factors and more, they're prolonging adolescence, hanging in the air somewhere between boyhood and manhood. Then you add to that now, because of all this, the nuclear family, a two-parent family, husband-wife family unit, they're now the minority in the United States, which is just tragic for a culture. When you have a culture where the nuclear family is disintegrating, it's not long before that culture is gone. 49.7% of the nation's households, this was 20 years ago, were made up of married couples. Less than half 20 years ago. So it's confusing. And generally speaking, men are confused. And oftentimes men in the church are confused because you get in trouble for talking about these sorts of things. And lonely too. Something we don't talk about enough. One of the things that needs to be happening here this semester is friendships being built. Male friendships that go deep. Barry Davis says, every man's just looking for the next locker room. That's why so many people love sports and try to keep going back, or even the military, because there was that camaraderie. Surgeon General advisory. So he's thought a little bit about it. recently warned that the number one killer of men is loneliness. In her book, The Lonely Century, Norwina Hertz says in terms of health outcomes, loneliness is comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Loneliness is worse than obesity, strongly associated with cognitive decline and dementia, and kills more men than cancer and heart disease. So this semester, jump in, man. If you're not already, plug in. You need godly male friends. This is the place. And one of the biggest things is just to show up, right? You're here. Thanks for being here. Come to the Big Four. Come to Sunday school. Come to service. Come on Sunday nights, first and third. Keep coming to midweek. Jump in and make some friends. You're the average of the closest 5 people around you. That's your average. Get some good, godly friends. Andrew Fuller, this 17th century, 1700s Baptist pastor, said, be very conversant with your Bibles. Then he says, the company we keep and the books we read insensibly form us into the same likeness. Get you some godly homies. So we'll be talking about community, we'll be talking about purpose, talking about responsibility. What we need is clear definitions about what a man is and what he is to do. And thankfully, the scriptures are clear. It's one of the greatest needs, really, it is. One of the greatest needs in the world and the church is men with a target. We need targets, right? We need targets in life, we need targets in finances, we need targets on the range, we need targets in the field, we need targets in our urinals. Did you know that when people put targets in urinals, it's amazing. There are studies that show how much cleaner things stay. We're made to aim. And what is the aim? What is the chief aim of man? Glorify God. Let's look at a few texts. Go to 1 Corinthians 10. 1 Corinthians 10:31. Hopefully you know this. If not, your homework this week is to memorize this verse. We'll memorize a verse a week. 10:31. I love these universal statements here. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God. There it is. What's your chief aim? What's your chief end as a man of God? It's to bring God glory regardless of what you do. That's your main purpose. Whatever you do in life is really important for a man. We'll talk about that. Location is really important. But what you do is not your purpose. What you do is a vehicle for your purpose. And what's your purpose? To glorify God in all things. Flip over to the next book. Go 2 Corinthians 5. Verse 9. So whether we are at home or away, here he's talking about dead or alive, regardless, we make it our aim, here it is, brothers, to please him. What is your aim in life? It's to please the Lord. What is your aim in life? Whatever you do, even the smallest things like eating and drinking, it's to bring God glory. That's why you exist. Flip over to Colossians 3. Flip to your right a few books. Let's go 3:17. And whatever you do, in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. In the totality of your interactions, everything in the name of Jesus, your entire life placed under obedience, whatever it is he calls you to do. It says something similar in Philippians. He says, basically, with all boldness, I want to see Christ exalted. Philippians 1:21. That's your aim, is to glorify God. But here at Southside, one of the things we'll talk about is we want to raise disciples. We want to raise godly people, but that's not really what we say. We want to raise up, by God's grace, godly men and godly women. And there's so much that we will have in common. It's the same conversation. There's also a whole lot where it's going to look different to be a godly man than to be a godly woman. So that's what this class is going to be about. How can you glorify God as a godly man? So what then is biblical manhood? What is it? Well, it has nothing to do with physicality. Honestly, in West Texas, there's a lot of things that may come to mind that it has nothing to do with biblically. There's a lot of distortions of what manhood is. Check out this man card. Here's a typical. Punch your task as each is achieved. Grow an epic beard. Most of you probably don't need to do that. Carry buckskin knife. Learn to weld. Forrest got it. Enter lumberjack contest. Hike the Appalachian Trail. Rebuild an engine, any of them. Be 1/10 as manly as Steve McQueen. Drink Glenlivet 18. Neat. Stop purse snatcher. Build a log cabin. Survive a rattlesnake bite. Take up smoking tobacco from a pipe. Rescue kitten from a tree. Sounds like what? Clay copy. Where is Clay, by the way? Someone call him out. He should be here. Earn huge face scar. Kill 12-point buck with a bow. Those things are fun. Many of us love to do most of those things. That ain't what we're talking about. You can be a very frail, small guy who likes the arts and be a robust biblical man. I always love thinking about David. David killed a lion, played the harp. What a guy. Renaissance man. A lot of books that lay out a vision for biblical manhood. We recommend several. Voddie's Family Shepherd's the place to start. But let me just summarize. They're all basically saying the same thing. So there's a book that made a lot of waves several years ago. It's actually got a little bit of deficient theology in it, but John Eldredge is wild at heart. Moved a lot of men this way: a battle to fight. Every man has a battle to fight, an adventure to live, and a beauty to rescue. A lot of truth to that. Robert Lewis, what a guy. Robert Lewis from Arkansas is the one who started, what was it originally called? Something to do with knights? Raising a modern day knight, right? That was Robert Lewis in Arkansas. It transitioned to the 30 series, I think, for a while, and now is Better Man. What a dude, Robert Lewis. Still a good book to read, a little bit cheesy. But he says every man has needs a will to obey, a work to do, and a woman to love. Sounds similar, right? Robert Morley, done a lot of work on biblical manhood, says men need a cause, a companion, and conviction, meaning like his worldview. Cause, companion, conviction. Tony Evans, whom I don't think is finishing well, I don't know the details, but said men need to set out to slay the dragon, storm the castle, and rescue the beauty in distress. Slay the dragon, storm the castle, rescue the beauty in distress. Better Man now says a man needs to focus on his word, his woman, his work, and his worlds. Those are all good. In this class, we're going to do lead, love, provide, protect. What is biblical manhood? Lead, love, provide, protect. So here's the plan. A little different now. We were going to have some time at tables, but it's a good problem to have. Thanks for being here. So we'll come together, we'll talk, we'll do what we've done tonight. If you're not in a D group, let me encourage you to make that a goal, is to meet someone. Maybe some dudes are already in a D group and hop in with them. A D group, if you're not familiar, is a group of 3 to 6 men, women have them going too, that meet weekly. And the goal of these groups is to grow spiritually. We think that's kind of the secret sauce to grow. It's one thing if you're in a group of mixed gender, that's good for community, but you're probably not going to get real when homeboy's wife is right there, right? But if you're with 4, 5, 6 dudes who now getting to know, love, and trust, you can be real with one another and you can fight sin together. One of the things we're talking about, you won't gain victory over sin if it stays in the dark. You need help. No Lone Ranger Christians. Those are dead ones. So if you're not in a D group, make that a goal, certainly by the end of the semester. Take up the reading. So we're going to assign some of Family Shepherds. It'd be good to read again if you've already read it. It's a great book. Again, you'll take out what you put in. And then we'll come back and do it again. Let me encourage you to get to know some of the dudes. Manhood is like a baton, right? It's got to be passed. It's got to be shown, not just taught. It's where women are a little different, man. Some of you who've had wives who've had babies. Isn't it amazing to watch that internal switch when they go from your wife to your baby mama? Something in them just turns on immediately. It's amazing to watch. But we're not like that, really. Men become, women are. So here's the plan. Didn't cover everything I wanted to cover tonight, which will probably be the norm, but we got a lot of weeks. I was going to cover live with intention, but just talking about the cultural confusion tonight. Next week, we'll talk about living with intention and purpose for your life and some habits. Then we'll look at the foes of fruitful masculinity in week 3, which are feminism, fatherlessness, and apathy. Then we'll take a week just to talk about theology, because you got to have something sturdy to stand on if you're going to last, that conviction piece that Robert Morley talked about. And we're just going to look at a few key doctrines doctrines that are really important for men to grasp. Those will be God's sovereignty. If you got a weak view of God, probably going to produce weak men. God's sovereignty, the lordship of Christ, the antithesis, grace, optimism, those kinds of things. And we'll take a look at male headship from Genesis 1 to 3. It's really where the battle rages. Those chapters are where the battle rages in the church. So that's the hard part, is we got to talk about the world, and then we got to talk about the worldly church. There's a lot of that on this discussion, so we'll talk about male headship from those first chapters. Then we'll have a chapter on, a section on one chapter of the Bible, Ephesians 5, as we talk about marriage. Then we'll get into lead, love, provide, protect more specifically. We'll talk about leading ourselves and talk about the means of grace and being the chief repenter and the chief worshiper in our home. Then lead your family and having a vision and direction and family worship and decision making and love, cruciform love, romance, sex, and then provision, not just materially but holistically. Talk about work and vocation and stewardship. Then we'll talk about protection and spiritual warfare and doctrine and education and discipline and home defense if we have time. And then education, technology, purity, so much to talk about. Here's how we define it at Southside. Biblical manhood consists of leading, loving, providing, and protecting. Lead, love, provide, protect. And to unpack that a little bit, a man of God is called to lead himself by denying himself, following Jesus, and helping others do the same. Man of God is called to lead his family as head of the home. Man of God is called to love his family with cruciform love. Man of God is called to provide holistically for his family. Physically, that's the easiest. Emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually. And a man of God is called to protect his family from physical and mostly spiritual danger. Lead, love, provide, protect. So we'll spend the semester really unpacking that definition. If you're here and you're like mad right now, let me just encourage you to keep coming as we fill this out. I know this is a controversial topic, hot topic in today's world. Let me encourage you to keep coming, especially as we open the text. We want to follow God's word and think his thoughts after him. And some of you, again, here's the hard part of this is we've got a range of dudes. Some of you are killing it. Some of you don't have a clue. Some of you are 60. Some of you are 20. Some of you are married. Some of you are not. Some of you have little kids. Some of you have older kids. Some of you are empty nesters. Some of you are grandparents. We're going to try to hit the whole range of things. And for you who've walked it a little bit, got a little bit more gray hair, there'll be a temptation of the enemy this class to cause you to regret. Because maybe you didn't do things the way you would if you could start all over. Maybe you're empty nester and you wish you had done A or you wish you had done B. Listen, mine are 15 to 8. I've already got regrets. Life in a fallen world is going to have regrets. The goal of this class is to help us minimize those regrets. And it's never too late to start. And so as the enemy tries to throw those darts at you, maybe just preach the gospel to yourself. Regret at the end of the day is not an option in a world with a sovereign and good God. So be encouraged, be motivated, redeem the time, start now, never too late. Heard that old ancient Chinese proverb, best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. Second best time is today. J.C. Rowell, tomorrow is the devil's day, but today is God's. Satan does not care how spiritual your intentions are or how holy your resolutions, if only they are determined to be done tomorrow. So what you're going to get is a lot of information this semester. And the temptation is to know it, but not do anything. I'm going to try to help you this week with some clear assignments. But if you just get a head full of information and even wisdom, really wouldn't be wisdom if you didn't act on it. But don't do something, it's all going to be for naught. And this is a temptation of dudes. Some of us want to just learn and learn and learn and learn and never just do what's right in front of us. At the end of the day, most of you already know what you need to be doing, and hopefully we'll fill that in to be men of action, not just hearers of the word, but those who do it, starting today. So brothers, I'm thankful for you. Thankful you're here. The potential in this room is really strong. Let's just think about even a fraction of this room getting engaged to pursue the Lord wholeheartedly and to seek to lead your family and lead anyone under your realm of influence to Christ-centeredness, to glorify God. I mean, man, there's some potency in this room. And you know what like gives me chills is to think about the generational impact that you can make. And many of us didn't have what we would have necessarily designed. We can turn it. We can be the difference maker. And you think about your kids and their kids and their kids and the generational fruit that can be had because you got serious about your walk with the Lord. It gets me excited. At the same time, I know that the enemy hates this. Absolutely hates it. I don't know if there's much that he hates more than a man pursuing God wholeheartedly. Alicia was last night like, Blake, I'm going to be praying for you in a big way this semester because you've got a big target on your back this semester as we talk about being men of God. So do you. You do too. The enemy doesn't want you coming back next week. He wants you falling out. He doesn't want you engaged. And so just be on guard. He hates the fact that you're here. He hates the fact that you're willing to hear the word. He hates the fact that you're willing to act. And so let's make it a semester that we end in May and everything's different. It's a new trajectory. Many of you have been on it, and what happens is the devil just beats us down and we fall off a little bit, and this semester we're going to get back on, and the resolve is to stay on. But God has made you for influence, for leadership. And think about your great-great-great-grandkids and the impact that you can make because you're making disciples. Ian Bound says, men are God's method. The church is looking for better methods. God is looking for better men. Way back in 1980, James Dobson, again, the late James Dobson, man, we've lost some heroes. What a guy, James Dobson. His dad was an evangelist. He started Focus on the Family, and his dad was an evangelist, very effective evangelist, very fruitful evangelist, and he was gone all the time. And at one point, his wife, so this is, I don't know his name, this is James Dobson's dad, but his wife calls him one of the times he's out traveling, again, very fruitful, successful evangelist, and she says to her husband, I need you home. I need you home. And he resolved, you know what? I'm done. He stopped his televangelist ministry and focused on the family. And James Dobson was raised by a godly man whose name we don't even know. And just think about the impact that Focus on the Family's had on many, many decades of men. He says this, way back in 1980, James Dobson, the Western world stands at a great crossroads in its history. It's my opinion that our very survival as a people will depend on the presence or absence of masculine leadership in millions of homes. I believe with everything within me that husbands hold the keys to the preservation of the family. So I'm glad you're here. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fruitful. Here's some homework for the week. If you're not already, daily time in the Word and prayer. Just find a place, get a plan. You're going to fall behind, doesn't matter. Make it what you do. I would encourage you to think about the mornings. We'll talk about this in a few weeks, but find a spot and grab a plan. There are hundreds, and make it where this is your time that you meet with God every day. You're going to hear from God's word, and you're going to pray to him. It's just a given. I do this every day. Daily quiet time. Come to the Big Four. Sunday school, corporate worship, first and third Sunday nights. Wednesday nights you're here. Read a proverb of the day. So within your plan, read a proverb of the day. Just use the calendar. Whatever day of the week it is, read that proverb. Why do I say that? Because proverbs are especially addressed, they're for all God's people, but especially to men, to sons, especially sons at the edge of maturity. Wisdom says, by me kings reign, Proverbs 8:15. By me kings reign. It covers all the things, your words, your mission, your marriage, multiplication, money, your mouth, all those things. Another way to put it covers your wife, your work, your wealth, and your words. It says, my son, 30 to 40 times, because it's this father discipling his son, 30 to 40 times in 31 chapters. So be in the Word, be here, and memorize 1 Corinthians 10:31 this week. There might be a pop quiz next week.